Okay, people are coming. Lovely. Welcome.
Hello, guys.
Hello. Everyone hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Hello. Yes.
Thank you, I'm Jeff.
Lord, am I typing into the Twitch or into the Discord?
I have statement that early writing, letting you know.
Okay, so what we've set up with
just a
October is that she's going to type in our group chat. And
the Discord group chat.
The Discord group chat. And Elle is here to read it out. So that way we can translate the written chat into the Discord as well.
Got it.
Yes. And similarly, friendly reminder, I will be having to summarize what you're saying and typing it out. So if you can keep it relatively slow, much appreciated.
Exactly. So you're already typing, I see.
Yes.
Okay, I think there's more people joining us in a minute, but I would like to start with a... Okay, so we already have some audio issues.
All right, good start.
People are also still joining. This is the first big one, the first one that actually fills up the whole call, so this is going to be a bit more chaotic than we've had it so far.
Sorry.
Mario to be on.
Okay. Quick tip for you, Elle. If you type out something and you hit arrow up, it automatically takes you to editing the last message.
Sorry, can you repeat that?
If you type something in chat and then you hit the arrow up, it automatically lets you edit your last message.
Cool.
Just for typing around, that might be helpful.
Let me try to. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
You don't need to yell.
We can hear you.
I can hear everyone. So,
We can hear and okay, we're gonna get into it. It's gonna take a second, and then.
Sure, do you mind grabbing like a spoon or something so I can just fix the camera?
We're also still missing.
yeah. I have the statement. I can pull it up right now.
Elle has the statement.
Should we start with the statement?
Yes, we can start with the statement. So for everybody else, we're going to do a quick introduction round first.
Perfect.
And then...
There you go. It's all cut up, so whoever's reading that, click on that and read that. There you go.
And then Elle's going to read the statement for October.
Okay.
Sounds
good.
This is good.
And we'll see when... I know that June is going to be a bit late. I haven't heard from Andrea yet, but I hope that she's going to come soon as well. Until then, let's do a quick round of introductions. Who wants to start?
I'll go first.
Okay.
Hi, my name is Margaret Elizabeth. I'm the National Co-Chair of the Lavender Caucus for the Green Party of the United States. I'm really glad to be included, and I look forward to getting to know all of you today.
Awesome. We're getting echo from somewhere.
I hear that echo.
Sorry, I think that's me. My headphones aren't working.
My headphones.
Yeah.
From October.
Yeah, that's fine.
All right, we're going to have to try really hard to keep things kind of one at a time just for the sake of being able to transcribe clearly. That's all right. But from October, hi. I'm October of Deaf Trans Mad Genius Arts and Deaf Girl Music. Nice to meet y'all. Pronouns she, her, they, them. I am a deaf, non-binary trans woman. As for me, I'm Elle, she, her, they, them, they, fair. I will be reading things out loud. As I do.
Perfect.
Okay.
My name is Kiri Ann Ryan Stewart. I work primarily in the intersections of queer and faith identities. I work at one of the fastest growing United Methodist churches in the United States. And if you know anything about the United Methodist Church at all, right now it is going through enormous changes in regard to LGBTQ rights and recognition within the church and participation. And so I have a very keen eye on what's happening there. And other than that, I primarily function as an encourager and someone who tries to bridge the gaps that sometimes occur between faith and queer communities.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Okay, give us 1 second for Elle to catch up. Okay.
Oh,
Who's next?
I'm fine.
Okay. Who wants to go next?
No? Okay. Hi, I'm Ellie from Germany. What do I do? It's basically just all around counseling of gender questioning and trans people. I do suicide prevention. I'm currently expanding to support trans people in prison. And yeah, basically just any general advice, I will provide it.
Okay. Welcome. Glad you could make it.
Thank you.
Who wants to go next? Somebody? I'm not gonna start like I really don't want to like put people on the spot and like call people out by name.
Yes,
Okay.
teacher.
We can't hear. Can we hear you? No. Maya, do you want to go first until Cadence figures out
I
there?
can do that.
Thank you.
Yeah, I haven't really prepared a fancy introduction for myself, but my name is Maya. I try to spread awareness in Germany about being trans and being a parent at the same time. And yeah, so like at the intersection of parenting Twitter bubble in Germany and the trans Twitter bubble, I think. And like that's my main thing, but I also try to be very vocal about the proposed law changes that they all try to do and everything else that comes up. But yeah, you mainly find me on Twitter.
Awesome.
A message from October. October is working as a multimedia creative arts specialist with Deaf Trans Mad Genius Arts and Deaf Girl Music to bridge the gaps between the deaf and hearing community when it comes to deaf LGBTIQA+ people having little to no access on getting what they need in terms of healthcare and social services, mental health services, community resources, etc., and sometimes promotes Deaf Queer Resource Center, which is still slowly making a comeback after falling off the grid in late 2000s, which is run by Drago, the deaf community's first heavily present deaf trans.
Awesome. Can we hear? Okay, somebody's moving around something on their desk, I think. I don't know what that sound is. Can we hear you now?
Please work. Because I don't want there to be too much.
Who's in the kitchen?
Hi,
Sorry. Let me try and figure.
Take your time, everybody. We have 2 hours to talk, so we don't have to be stressed about the technical issues. This is usually what happens when a lot of people join a stream. I'm trying to see. So, Henri, can you hear us?
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay. Do you want to introduce yourself next?
Yeah, sure. I'm Henri. I am a trans woman of color. I attend the University of Wisconsin Stout, and more or less, like, I just happen to go and balance my college life along with activist life on Twitter and even sometimes in regards to my school community. So that's more or less my job for now.
Awesome. Thank you for joining us today.
Oh, Henri, sorry.
Yes, I think you weren't there for that part. We are having a parallel text conversation at the same time, so that October can follow our conversation. That's what Elle is doing. So she's typing it away in the background. So try to, whenever possible, keep your statements in a way that they can be typed out as well. And when Elle is speaking, that's usually that's her reading October's messages. Okay.
I wanted to check and see if y'all are able to hear me.
Yes.
Awesome.
Yes.
We're just disconnecting the turtle tank, so there's not a lot of background noise. So then I'll give my quick introduction.
All good. Take your time.
So did you want me to read off the instructions? Weren't really clear. The active, or sorry, that was what. Okay, somebody else provided that. Okay, so there's a lot going on. So I'm Cadence. I am in Denver, Colorado, and I'm a student activist. Do work on campus of my university. We're very small right now, but it's called Gender Expansive Education and Advocacy. And right now, our work mostly surrounds getting rights on campus and getting recognized by our community. I've been organizing this for about a year. Right now, we're still trying to grow and figure out our roots and figure out what we're doing next. So it's kind of small, but very significant to me.
Awesome. Wait. Okay. Yes. Thank you so much. Elle, do you want to read out the statement next?
Sure, I'll read out the statement.
Part?
Yes. Works nicely because I already have it up. And then I can save my phone battery. Hi. So I'm reading for October. I'm going to keep using first person just because I'm not going to translate the entire statement. And clearly this is October speaking. Hi, I'm October. I'm a deaf non-binary trans woman from Vermont here in the United States, and I'm 31 years old. I've been in the independent and underground music scenes for 20 years under a dead name / birth name and 2 stage names before I legally changed my name to October and went by that name in my rap group, my last band, and a short-lived solo project. I'm also a multimedia deaf creative artist, writer, poet, vlogger, and comedian, ASL poet, where I do poetry videos in sign language, and indie filmmaker, as well as an activist, actress, and photographer. I'm presenting to you today a short version of my original media presentation that might not have enough time to share with you all during the TDOV live streaming event on Twitch, so here we go. Deaf Trans Mad Genius Arts is a multimedia creative arts studio with its own indie film productions company, founded by me and is run / managed today with myself and a small team of people in the deaf, trans, non-binary communities, creating original content that is meant to inspire, to entertain, and educate those on various social issues, topics, and discussions that we have today about deaf people in the LGBTIQA+ community and the lack of accessibility that we struggle with in order to try to gain access in the queer trans non-binary community. I paint, draw, perform, do deaf stand-up comedy that is somewhat political and apolitical both, act, film, photograph, and write in various ways in the hope of being able to bridge the divides that once isolated us for far too long. If you're interested in supporting Deaf Trans Mad Genius Arts, even in the midst of a global pandemic, you're welcome to do so by subscribing for only just $1 a month today on Patreon, and it would help me a lot to be able to continue working from home, to afford most of my living expenses and my art supplies, creative artistic gear and equipment, film photography gear upgrades, my internet, my website hosting fees, overhead costs, etc., by going to www.patreon.com/deaftransmadgeniusarts. I look forward to continue creating content that entertains, educates, and inspires you all. Thank you. Deaf Girl Music, a trademarked name. If somebody can just quickly type out that I am reading the statement, that would be great. that actually represents my self-titled solo project under my legally changed name, is a solo project that's 20 years in the making and have been working on a lot of brutally honest, soul-bearing, life-saving, and eye-opening music that is meant to be a beacon of hope for those who have none. Hauntingly beautiful, yet tormented and showing beauty in all the negative spaces, Deaf Girl Music, spelled GRRRL, by the way, is creating original music, cover songs, B-sides, unreleased demos, and rarities that will be featured on my Farewell Anthology album box sets, along with animated music videos and official lyric videos, due to the fact that COVID-19 has canceled music video productions outside and in different states, cities, towns, locations that we have originally paid fees to get film permits to film said original planned music videos at until the coronavirus pandemic hit the entire music industry. And COVID-19 has canceled my farewell tour until further notice. I'm going on a semi-retirement break from the music industry for a few years or so after this album box set is completed, and it's because I want to focus on all my creative artistic projects with Deaf Trans Imagineers Arts at this time. I also will be hosting a live streaming #QuarantineLife acoustic session series from home throughout the year and posting behind-the-scenes vlog webisodes on YouTube-Patreon. If you're interested in supporting my music, you can do so going to my Patreon for only $1 a month at patreon.com/deafgirlmusic. Buy my music directly on various music store platforms that I'm available on, such as iTunes, Bandcamp, Amazon Music, Google Play Music, etc. Streaming my music nonstop on platforms like Apple Music, Deezer, Tidal, Napster, SoundCloud, and Spotify. And give likes to all my videos on YouTube if you can, since there's transphobic right-wing haters trying to tear me down on YouTube with thumbs down and hateful comments that I've since then deleted. My official website is deafgirlmusic.com. Thank you for coming to my media presentation on the Transpeer Network's TGOV Twitch stream today. Have a great weekend, everyone. Enjoy this new single I released, which is from my Farewell Anthology album box set. The song is called Until Now, which is all about the traumas, tragedies, addictions, and issues I struggled with and overcame, and finally becoming at peace with myself in the end as a deaf, non-binary trans woman. The lyrics are presented separately in a different document if you need to read it on Discord or on the stream chat here. Thanks again. Sincerely, October. P.S. If you're interested in reading a longer version of both Part 1 and Part 2 of my media presentations that I was originally going to present to you on the TDOV Twitch stream, I will be posting it on Patreon for subscribers and on my official website later. And we're done.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Also, thank you for putting together the presentation. I'm not muted. Okay. And June is here. Awesome. Let's see if she can figure out her setup as well.
The kitchen. I'm gonna move my microphone now, right?
Okay. I only missed. They, them. Okay. Yeah. If anybody else wants to and hasn't yet given their pronouns, go ahead. In chat or here in the stream as well. And then we're slowly gonna get to a point where we can start talking. This is a big change. I'm sorry. I just came from 4 people being on a stream to now it being 10.
Oh, same actually.
So the speed of everything will have to be adjusted slightly. I am also no longer capable of looking at the actual chat. And we have one more person who wants to join, so that's going to be great. How's everybody doing? Let's start simple.
I'm doing really well. Happy to be here. I really enjoyed the medical talk from the last 2 hours. I watched almost the whole thing, and it was so cool. It was really, really fascinating.
Yeah, I thought so as well. Outside of that, is anyone else doing good? I'm doing all right.
I'm actually doing pretty well. I've just been hopping from call to call, which is why I haven't been able to watch the other streams, which is good, because otherwise I'd probably pretty intimidated by all the other folks. I'm just kind of jumping right in without any expectations.
Yeah, same. It's an intimidating experience to be on a call with a bunch of people that you don't know their personalities, and with a lot of people watching. So I appreciate that nervousness quite a bit.
Gosh, there's so many people watching. Wow.
Oh yeah,
Don't tell me the
jumped a
number.
bit. It's not too bad. It's not bad. It's nice to see though.
It's more people than usually come to, I don't know, when I organize a talk or something. I guess it's easier to just hop on Twitch, right?
It's also pooling a lot of different people in, and a lot of different people's audiences kind of come together. So I think that
It
definitely
sure
helps.
does.
Okay, so I think one thing that I want to talk about here now, especially because we just had the statement read out, is accessibility in general in activism and in the LGBTQI community. I think that's a topic that I know that doesn't come up as often as I expect it to. I know that here, at least in Toronto, what I've seen is that interpretation is provided relatively often, but I have been to a lot of places where that was not the case. And I was wondering if either October wants to add something on that topic specifically, or if others have experience with other forms of accessibility and how to handle that in their work.
What's going on? Someone joined again.
I think June is still figuring out her technical stuff. That's okay.
So I can address that from a slightly different perspective. My accessibility issues aren't visual or hearing, so as a consequence, I can use websites fairly well. But as a political organizer, one of the things I do run into is trying to make online resources available to people who find difficulty in accessing online resources for a variety of reasons. We have things like Basecamp and Discord and just websites and email lists to facilitate discussion. But nevertheless, if you are a visually impaired person, your ability to participate online is severely curtailed. And it makes it really difficult to organize in my community in particular when I can't provide an easy way for people to access our information. I try to work with different reader softwares to make sure our websites are accessible to them. But there are a lot of different reading softwares, and they don't all work the same. And I find personally, as an organizer, it's really frustrating because of the inconsistent standards and the difficulty it is in having like closed captioning work properly. So that it's just a frustrating experience as an organizer, generally speaking.
From October, sadly for me, I have to get a sign language interpreter when it comes to trying to translate what is being said by me and my group, and most of the times they're not available. So that's another complication there.
To an echo and a point that was made in the chat, yeah, it's the inconsistency of standards, which is really frustrating. And I don't know if any of you all are organizers and what you have done to overcome it. But as an aside, if you have figured out a way to provide good accessibility, please message me after this chat, because I'm really interested in doing so.
Honestly, not yet. I think most of my stuff is on Twitter, where the main thing is visual. That is an issue. I keep telling everybody to enable the little image description option for when they post pictures.
And use it.
Sorry?
And actually use it
And actually
afterwards.
use it. Exactly. Also the same with like reaction GIFs right above it, what the GIF is showing. I think there's a lot of these like very small, simple things that I keep forgetting as well, but that I'm trying to do on that level to make those experiences as accessible as possible. becomes much more difficult in a like video call setting as we are experiencing right now, to translate that into text in this case.
So echo that. I agree with the, adding text to GIFs, not just for people who are hard of hearing or sorry, I'm trying to, essentially, I struggle with, I have autism, so being able to read GIFs and completely understand what the message is that's being sent is very difficult. So there's that extra barrier. So I try and keep that in mind because there are other people that struggle with different forms of that inaccessibility, and you just never know what could help. And so like that definitely, I saw you, Laura, right? Am I saying it right? I see you caption stuff on Twitter, and that's definitely.
I'm also still definitely something I need to get better at because I keep forgetting it in the heat of the moment so very often.
As a response to Margaret's point from October, yes, I am an organizer. I often ask for access from AI, Access Inclusion, and ASL captions to transcribe everything in all of my videos and presentations. Oh. And when I'm working with a hearing audience, I have a sign language interpreter translating what I'm saying at speaking events. And sometimes we have to book one at least 1 to 2 weeks in advance to make sure they're there.
Yeah.
Here we can.
Go ahead. Okay. I'm not sure what she's signing though.
She's signing the same. She's signing the same message that she typed down.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah.
The previous message.
At least, yeah, that's what they've typed.
Okay.
Mind telling her that?
I believe she knows. It's the request you put in. But yeah.
Okay.
Okay. We can try to synchronize those two. The reading and the signing. Okay. I wish I could have found a interpreter who could have done it without the text interface that we're using right now, but that was not something I could get done in this situation right now. So we'll have to do it this way. Okay. Yes, exactly. I would like to move on to if somebody else has their area of where they are working or where they're active that they want to talk about. I think June is still figuring out the internet issues, the technical issues that she's having. I hope that that's going to work out in a minute. Or can you hear us, June?
Anyone? No. Otherwise, I would start.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm thinking about accessibility in a different way. Not like in offline spaces, because there's just no accessibility anywhere near my hometown. But since I work mostly with questioning people and like people who are very early in transition, you really do get to know that the problems that they have are kind of the same ones I had like 5 years ago. There's this just plethora of information out there that nobody sees because they're all just Googling "Am I trans?" or something. And I've been thinking about how to sort of solve this problem, what would you call that? Providing information in a way that actually gets to the people who need it most. Like, yes, there is some value in people who are like 2 years into medical transition, finding out new details about some medicine. People who aren't really part of the community yet, like actively, have no idea how to get those resources.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Definitely. I think a big part of what I do is connected to the same general population, whereas people who are not out yet in any way who contact through Twitter mostly. I think a lot of us probably have that experience of people being like, hey, I know my account looks like that of a cis dude, but I'm actually a trans woman, but I haven't come out to anybody yet, and I don't really know what to do. And I don't know what kind of resource pooling can be done on that level, because it's very often based on like, I followed you and you've put a lot of you out there, and so I trust you specifically to talk to you, while I wouldn't just write a general organization where I don't have a face and a person that I feel like I have at least some information about.
Yes.
And that can probably be built with reputation and just time, where people in Toronto know that the 519 is a good resource to go for, but you still don't have like the personal aspect of it, and I think that's very difficult to replicate.
Yeah. Okay. I've been kind of destroying my brain trying to think of ways to make it accessible to people who don't even have Twitter accounts, who may not even be able to have a Twitter account because I don't know, because they're living with their parents who are like trans hostile or some shit.
Yeah.
Like, we need this information out there for the kid who has 2 minutes to Google something, you know?
Yeah. I know that outreach organizations, especially focused on children, like Mermaids in the UK, are implementing features for that, like a button on the website that makes the website look different if the parents walk by. Like stuff that is very standard here that I didn't really see in Germany, where if I go to a doctor or if anything translated comes up, if they take my contact information, it's never what's your number, it's what's your number, can we leave a voice message, can we be open about what we're talking about, do you want us to pose as something else, is this a safe number that only you get, or is this something where others might be reading it that shouldn't, and we don't want to out you? And I think there's a lot of those measures that can be put into place to protect people who don't have a safe environment where they can be openly dealing with these things.
Yeah, that's downright utopian for Germany.
Yeah, I agree with that. That's just, we don't really have that kind of awareness here.
Yeah. My insurance sent a verification letter for my psychotherapy to my parents' address when I wasn't out yet. It was great. I had to tell them that I was burned out from uni and just hope that the letter didn't say what the psychotherapy was.
So yeah, I think those are, again, processes, just like making sure things are accessible, or at least there's a way to ask for accessibility that can be implemented in these things. Go ahead, Kiri.
One point of sort of experience that I can contribute to this is within faith spaces, there's obviously an added layer of danger because of parents who may be very unaccepting of LGBTQ people, and so students who are wrestling with gender or sexual identity often are able to talk to their youth leaders, but then the connection sort of stops there. They don't have much access to other resources within faith spaces because parents are so involved. And if it's unsafe for a child to be out to their parents, then we have to create some sort of screen which they can safely express and ask questions and get information. So in my experience, what has been done in youth programs is they have created support groups and classes and things that are centered around anxiety and depression. And that's how they're billed. That's how they're advertised, to parents, like your students can be part of this anxiety and depression group. And those are things that are all very standard for young people to experience and also are very good for them to learn about. But then within those programs, sort of unbeknownst to the parents, there are sections and resources available within those anxiety and depression focused groups that allow safe space for students to talk about gender and sexual identity without their parents, without them having to tell their parents, hey, I'm going to this LGBTQ faith group. Like, you can just say, no, I'm going to talk about depression and anxiety. And then inside of that context, they're able to talk about their gender and sexual identity without fear of having to come out sooner than they are ready to.
That'd be cool. From October, one of the things that I struggle with sorry, just a second. I'm going to let her know that we're reading, and so they can sign. All right, we're just scrolling up to get to the statement. One of the things that I struggle with as a deaf, non-binary trans woman is the fact that many in our community are unable to get the vital info or resources needed to be able to understand what is being translated to us. For example, there are trans YouTubers who cannot seem to fix their captioning issues, and that was a problem for a pretty famous deaf non-binary trans person named Blake Cully, who shared their experiences about how to determine if they were trans, non-binary, genderqueer, etc. And when it comes to internet accessibility, not everyone in the deaf world are able to understand what is being posted on various social media platforms. We read things differently than hearing people do when it comes to reading text or tweets or Facebook posts, etc. Our brains are wired in a way where we are unable to think and read the same as hearing people do, but are far more intelligent than most people think we are. That's the statement.
Okay. Okay, so we'll have to slow down a bit with the reading.
Yeah. I will try to read slower.
Okay.
All right.
I think that's the aspect of not just information being translatable from one medium to the other, being like reading something out loud or typing something down, but also like how you interpret things differently. That's also what Cadence brought up with the GIFs. I think that's a level where like I have a hard time thinking on that plane of accessibility as well, where it's not just about things are perfectly translatable from one to the other, but there's like different ways of interpreting the same information or different ways of thinking about the same information and processing it. Would probably like to have a 2-month seminar just on that every day, please.
For me, in the university context, we're all very busy, so we don't have, every student does not have the same amount of time or energy for things. I know I struggle with executive dysfunctions, like wanting to dedicate myself to 1,000,001 things, but not quite having the energy to do so. So when I'm organizing meetings, I try and make it as accessible as possible, but there's still that barrier. We have face-to-face meetings once a week, but we also have like sometimes what we call virtual meetings, where not necessarily we're meeting on video, but with meeting notes. So we'll all put in our thoughts and look at the notes together, and it really gives us that extra layer of structure, which is nice. But for those who don't have access to the internet, don't have access all the things, well, that you essentially need to even complete an essay in university, because our camp provides a lot of that. It's nice, but in situations like what we're going through right now with the pandemic, and that people are essentially isolated even from the internet, it's very difficult, because our university's been shut, so people don't have access to computers, so people aren't able to do their assignments. So there's just a lot of extra layers of planning that I've had to come up with in the last 2 weeks that I wasn't really ready for. So I can kind of I see where you're coming from, and struggling with that extra layer and just having to think about the what ifs and the how to. It's complicated, especially when building with activism, when building a grassroots community.
Can I throw one more layer in there, just so we have a really nice complicated pile of issues? Because the next point that like all of this is, comes up for me as well, is that if I look at the guest list, and if I look at the people who are coming on here, there's certain similarities between most of us, and I am finding it incredibly hard to effectively invite and bring on people who aren't white trans femmes, trans women, to the sense where I often, just like because of the circles I move in, these are the people I know, often because I don't get responses from people who are from outside of my community, because I'm outside of their community as well. And I think that's something that's very obvious if I look at the screen right now as well, again, where things like whether you're like trans mask or whether you're not white, these are things that I struggle with a lot when it comes to the community that I'm trying to build, where it's hard to bring people in who aren't very similar in a lot of their experiences to the people who are already there. And while it's not an accessibility issue in the sense of people can't read or can't hear or can't see or can't understand the same languages, there's still a certain barrier to be bridged there as well. And I wonder how all of these play together in like reaching people with like independently of all of these different hurdles on different levels that we encounter every day.
All right. Also from October, if you have any questions about deaf LGBTIQQA+ issues or deaf trans non-binary people, feel free to ask away. And they are currently typing a bit of response to yours. Yeah.
Okay. Henri, I know that you wanted to talk about that intersection of being a trans person of color
hear sehrlesbisch.
Yeah, as far as my perspective goes, being the trans person of color, it's like, okay, like I'm glad to be a part of the community in some cases, but and that just feels like so like I'm just like literally the low or like literally ended like literally the totem pole because of the fact that I'm trans, I'm dealing with like I'm dealing with like being a person of color, but where does that literally balance sort of meet because of the fact that in some cases, like yes, like you'd be glad to go and reach out to like other communities, at least other individuals, but would they basically as much like going to attend the same faith and the same favor? And it's like, okay, where do I have to go and like really start, and where do I go and end of it? In some cases, because I know that basically as much I'm like learning from my activism, but at the same time I also have like a college life that I want to go and balance too, and it becomes really really stressful, like for the most part.
Am I the only one who has audio issues, or is that coming from her?
I managed to hear everything.
Okay.
That
I
was
heard
hard to
everything,
hear.
but it was kind of hard. So I might have missed a sentence or two
A
there.
little
Sorry.
blurred. Yeah.
But I think we got most of it. Yeah. Yeah.
I think if I can add on to that, it's difficult if you ever try as a person of color, try and come out to your family. I'm white passing, so it doesn't really affect me in the same way. So I want to be careful who I try and connect with in that way, because I can get away with a lot. But in my culture, like it's a lot more difficult in the acceptance aspect, and that's not necessarily true for everybody in my same culture. I think that being a person of color and being trans it adds an extra layer of complication. That's just kind of what I was say. I think that I understand where you're coming from, in that like trying to figure out which doors you should go to, and then also feeling you're you're in charge of bridging that gap between your culture and your identity, if that makes sense. That's kind of how I feel.
Yeah. All right, got another statement from October on the matter. I'm just going to finish transcribing you and then get right back to reading that. Okay, so in terms of similarities of guest lists when building events like this stream, and how to access people from communities that hearing, trans, non-binary, queer people are not a part of, we oftentimes encourage everyone to caption all their videos, like making an intro video with captions on it when promoting events, and also hiring sign language interpreters beforehand in advance, but to ensure that the interpreters have good reputations, because many of us who are deaf have had bad experiences with certain types of interpreters who were manipulative, gaslighting, and or grooming us in our community. So always, and I mean always, verify their reputations. Slower still, okay. Also, as a white person, passing person, October 100% agrees with you, Cadence, on that statement. And kind of the complexities of what you claim and what you don't.
Thank you. Okay, moving from the accessibility subject, I would love to also hear some more from other people what their activism is, or like what they're doing, what they're working on right now, what kind of other barriers they face, what kind of things they found that worked really well. What is a project that you've been working on where you're like, wow, this is working. I'm getting good feedback. I feel like something is actually working well for me, and I think both these issues I think are very important to talk about, but also we can learn from successful projects. I know that one of the people that I wanted to have on here, but that didn't work out, is the person who is founded the Black Trans Travel Fund in New York. I know he's been doing a great job with building that up to something that a lot of people have heard about, even outside of just the local area. I really wanted him to talk about his experience with that, but he didn't come back to me. So I'm going to ask the people who did, what are some good projects of yours that worked out?
Well, I'm happy to hop in here and talk about my activism because I feel really passionately about it. So thank you for giving me a chance. And please pardon me for just a moment by mentioning that this is going to be from a particular perspective basically all the time, and it's not one that everyone shares. Nevertheless, my activism is in the Green Party. So the Green Party itself is a grassroots democratic party. And what that means is we go to individual people and try to empower and motivate them to participate in this process. So how do I, as a white passing person, become a person who can reach out to other communities, especially within the queer community that I represent? And in my own case, what I have discovered is finding issues that are specific to the trans community and the LGBTQIA+ in general community to focus on. And right now, in a very specific sense, in the Green Party, right, there is and if I may take a step for a second, in the broader society, you might know that there is a effort right now going on to criminalize, if you will, trans health care for trans kids. And my activism right now within the Green Party is specifically to defeat platform amendments and processes which are attempting to make that fact, criminalization of trans healthcare for trans kids, a reality within my political party. This is a huge problem. It's a huge problem for lots of people for lots of ways. So as a consequence, I try to find an intersectional approach to be able to present this to everyone I speak with. My party is an intersectional feminist party, and I really encourage you all to look that up if you don't know what it means. But broadly speaking, it just means that we can understand these different levels or different aspects of oppression that we face based on various specific configurations. But for me, as a person standing where I do, I try to look at it in a slightly different perspective. Along with intersectional oppressions, we also have intersectional privileges. And I stand in my community in a really big position of privilege, and I attempt to use that privilege to affect political change. And I can look at my nation builder, if you will, and I can see directly every time I put efforts into confronting bigotry, to confronting racism, to confronting hatred, I can see the direct increase in members that generates. And that gives me direct feedback into how my activism is going. Every time someone comes and joins my group and says, thank you, I say, okay, and I can correlate that, and that gives me the feedback I need. And I do believe, in a broad sense, that having the perspective of being in a political party is different in terms of activism. My activism is broadly eco-socialist, and so I can come to you and say, hey, people and planet, and I don't have to be any more specific than that to get a broad support from most people I talk to. And so I try to take that, like, okay, you agree with these basic concepts. Now let's go really specifically to these really, I want to say something like, for most people, niche concepts, but for me, big, important, everyday, mainstream kind of stuff. And I think, broadly speaking, we also face a situation where we have, for ease of discussion, 20% of the people on our team, 20% on the other team, and 60% of the people are a movable middle. And depending on how we approach that movable middle of people, we shift them towards the activism and advocation for civil rights. Just as an aside, the Equal Rights Amendment was proposed in 1923 and it's still not ratified. It's 97 years later, and we still don't have equal rights for women in the United States guaranteed in the Constitution. And this is a big deal. So anyway, that's my activism in a broad sense, and that's where I really focus it. So I'll yield. Thanks.
Thank you. I completely forgot to ask June to introduce herself when she came in. Everything's been a bit chaotic. I'm sorry. We can do that right now, real quick, if you're ready.
Sure. Hey, can you all hear me? All right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Good. Okay. Well, my name's June, and I'm the pastor of a Baptist church on the outskirts of Toronto. Who up until the pandemic happened was planning on coming out to her congregation June the 7th, and then socially transitioning shortly thereafter. I'm sort of curious as to how this is all going to change, because we're doing worship services, and I'm connecting with my parishioners internet now, and so. Yeah, that's, I'm 41, have 2 kids, live in the suburbs with my wife for now, and that's about it. Yeah.
Thank you.
If I may, I would like to ask Margaret something about basically what you told us just before. It has a lot to do with getting acceptance from cis people, right? A lot of the activist stuff that we talked about so far was about getting help to other trans people, and now you kind of mentioned a new topic there. And I would like to know if there are specific approaches that you use there, or best practices, and if we could maybe talk about that for a bit. Because this is something I really struggle with at times, and at the same time, I don't know if I've gotten the gist of it yet. Like, I don't know, for instance, I always don't know about finding the right tone for specific groups, because yeah, we know tone policing is bad and all, but it's something you kind of have to do when you are talking to cis people anyhow. I'm very interested in this specific topic because it affects a lot of how I interact with people on Twitter in general, and how I try to interact with the press, for instance, and stuff like that.
Well, thank you for the question. That's a really good one. If I can, for just a second, let me give it a specific context to perhaps make it a bit easier to speak about. So in terms of activism stuff, right now, as a trans person, as you probably know, there is a lot of, and has been for years now, discussion about trans people in bathrooms. And that is a big topic. And as a consequence, most of our discussion is with cis people about this issue. So there's a couple of ways that I generally approach this, and it's hard to know prior to discussing with the group that you're approaching how their attitude is about it. Nevertheless, my approach is what I call realpolitik. And this is a very good word to understand. There are these ideals that we have about reality and what we want, and then there is the on-the-ground, concrete reality of how things are. And my activism is with how things actually are, not so much where I want them to be. That's my goal. That's just a target in the future. But right now, I say things like, okay, look, you say you want to prohibit trans people in the bathrooms of wrong choices, but how would you go about this? And of course, they whatever they say, but ultimately, it comes down to a look. Someone's going to look at you and decide you belong. Now, in a general sense, that's a problem because it's very difficult to look at somebody and ascertain if they belong in the right place. But leaving some of that just aside for a second, I'll tell you this. So you can be a cis woman, have PCOS, right? And you could have facial hair, like a beard, you could have thinning hair, and you go into a bathroom, and because you don't look stereotypically feminine enough, you'll be asked to leave. So how do I talk to cis people to explain that other cis people are going to be impacted by their bigotry? It's a tricky spot to be in because I'm not one of them. nevertheless, I think it's easier for me when I do point out things like that very fact. There are plenty of people who don't have sex stereotypical looks, and as a consequence will be impacted by these sorts of legislations, which these legislations are not designed to impact. And as a consequence, we can understand them being very, very poorly written. And they're not, let's be 100% clear, they're far more broad than that. They don't just prohibit bathroom usage. They include criminalization for doctors to do all these other things. And I think, broadly speaking, most people are, and again, this is my perspective from within my party, but most people are the kind of people who, if they knew what the right thing was, they would do the right thing. They just don't know what the right thing is. And as a consequence, they have one group, vocal and loud, who are transphobic and TERFs, who dominate social spaces in the way that they talk. And so if you're a cis person just trying to understand this stuff, you might encounter a bunch of TERFy transphobic talk and never encounter like trans activists who are explaining it from a different perspective. And I think for me, because of the position I have, I tend to take a more educational tone with the whole thing. I just presume my opponents don't understand what they're talking about, and then therefore go about educating them. At some point, you realize, though, that some people you just can't reach, and they are not interested in education. They're not interested in having a broad and expansive view of the situation. And you have to, just cut your ties and move along to people who can be reached. And that's a tricky thing to do, because then you're obviously, cutting out a whole group of people who ostensibly would be impacted by the very same laws that they are wanting to pass. So that's what I basically do. I take this educational perspective. I try to facilitate the understanding of trans issues in relation to how it affects people who are not trans. So I think my broad perspective is relating it to trans people. If you're cis, here's how it impacts you in the same way it impacts us. So therefore, let's not do it. Sorry, I was kind of long-winded on that one.
But that's very interesting, because I think I do it very differently, actually. I always feel there's this tendency in me that wants to think about, talk about to people about how it might impact them, but it doesn't feel good for me. It feels like I'm not really talking about how it's impacting me. And so what I try to stress instead is how actually negatively this affects trans people, and get really, really sad about it. Not angry, because trans women are not allowed to be angry, but get very, very sad and very much I am sad about it. It's not, it's not manipulative or anything. I'm not acting like I am sad. I am actually, but I find that this is the emotion that conveys it to cis people a lot better. That you show them like, oh yeah, this is super hard for me, so it was interesting to hear that you seem to be successful with a more neutral educational approach, I'd say, because I just can't get myself to do that all the time.
I think mostly it has to do with the people I talk to, because I'm not dealing with people, broadly speaking, outside of my party. And so I presume certain baseline behaviors. Otherwise, why would you be in my political party? Leaving that bit aside, there's the thing. So I have a friend who's an activist, and one of the things that she explained to me, which I thought was super powerful, she's often called in to go do trainings and stuff for schools and educational institutions. And many times these are sex-segregated spaces. So she will usually go around the room talking to the young people, ask them to raise their hands if they've ever been told that they can't do something based on their gender. And almost every single kid raises their hands because they've all been told that for something. And she says, this is what it's like being trans. You're told you can't do something because of how you are. And most kids get that right away. So I think really the way your activism is kind of delivered has to do with the audience to whom you're speaking. Because I don't mostly deal with young people or people not in my party, my activism is fairly different than if I were just out in the world trying to deal with, like Elizabeth Hungerford and her ilk and all the rest. Even though I do deal with them because she's in, apparently, I don't want to get off too far afield on this stuff, but we are in the activism area. And these people are active in subverting trans rights wherever they can do it. So Labour UK, Green Party US, you name it, they are active in these places. And it's a big problem.
Henry's saying, do you want me to read it out? Do you want to say it for the stream as well? What would you prefer? We'll just always have to bring stuff back into audio from text because of the people watching us, and otherwise they can't follow.
All right.
Okay, so Henry's saying, from my perspective as a person of color, it's all about who's worth educating on this. As I can get very angry and very passionate easily if it will affect individuals like me. I don't want to cut my losses or like to cut my losses, but if I reach a limit, I take that loss and take the time to de-stress, especially politics-wise. Yeah. That's definitely something that, obviously depending on how many different things you face, comes easier or harder. But it's definitely a situation that I find myself in sometimes as well, where you need to take a step back because you just are being overwhelmed by things happening, or by opinions, or by vitriol that faces you in chat or on social media platforms or in real life in the worst case scenario.
Yeah, if I can speak as myself for a second. Recently, I got a fun swarm of being flooded by transphobes who were accusing me of being a groomer for saying that I would assist questioning trans youth if it came to me, which, can be overwhelming for a variety of reasons. And so you end up in a situation where, like, how do you kind of de-escalate after that? And how do you really get to that point of providing enough distance to choose to respond or not respond without accidentally making things worse for yourself because you care so much?
That's a good question. I don't know that you can ever avoid, like, some people misinterpreting and misconstruing what you say. The fact that you say something like, I think kids should have access to healthcare, shouldn't be ever construed as anything other than what you just said. Yet some people will take it as, oh my gosh, you're grooming kids. Look, that happens all the time. This is a statement and a thing which has been said against queer people since my whole life. Yeah. And before me. So this is going to continue. And at this point, it's just, personally, because I run into it so often, I find it kind of laughable. When my opponents make these points, I realize that they are internet warriors. They are not activists in any way. They're just trolling and trying to get a rise. This isn't the kind of conversation that people who are serious have. This is the kind of thing that the people who are not serious about these subjects bring up to us because they're trying to just be edgy or whatever it is. The fact of the matter is that as a big of a group as we are, because remember, as queer people, we're not just one sort of demographic. We hit a whole broad swath of people of different ethnicities, of different classes, of different cultural upbringings. And as a consequence, our collective activism is really very, very broad. And it makes it harder sometimes to really focus, or we end up focusing on things which are just applicable to us in our specific area of the community. Here where I live, for instance, it isn't much of a big deal about bathrooms. Seattle's super good with that kind of stuff. So my focus and my activism in my local community isn't about that. It's about other things. It's accessibility to IDs and the ability to have medical documents changed in an easy manner, right? As a political activist, one of the things you do run into is people in other countries or other actively oppositional groups putting out a message which is diametrically opposed to yours, and having in many cases at least a broader media perspective in which to amplify that voice. So like if you were talking against, let's say, like Mumsnet over in the UK, Mumsnet is a big place. They have a large outreach and they have a lot of voices there. If you're an individual person trying to protest what they're saying, you might find yourself on the receiving end of a bunch of anti-activists and criticism. And that's a really hard place to be. I deal with it a bunch. It doesn't affect me in the same way as it does a bunch of my peers because I'm older and I have a broader sense of resilience about this stuff, and I've been engaged in my activism for more than a decade. And as a consequence, it's just water under the bridge in a large sense. But if you're a newer person to activism, these are really disheartening kind of things to encounter and deal with. And if you're on your own, right, just a single person without an organization to support you, it can completely push you out of the field of activism. And I think that's a really bad thing. I personally try to recruit young people to join our party because, right, obviously that's the future of the party is young people joining. So I try to be exactly that and encourage that kind of activism.
Okay. I think there's in chat and in the conversation as well been a little bit of a back and forth on like, is it always worth engaging in conversations or not? I think you can always have some kind of, there's always a good reason why you would try, but especially as a person, not as an organization, there's very clear limits on your capacity. And there's very clear limits where engaging with people who are there to hurt you becomes not a productive thing, because it's not about them convincing you, it's not about you convincing them, and you invite hate and pain and hurt into your life that is not necessary. I'm sure everybody has experiences with that, and different people deal differently with that. I become very good at blocking and ignoring when it's not about we have different opinions, but it's about somebody trying to hurt me, whether online or in real life, and then just walking away. What are things that you and maybe some of the people who haven't been talking as much yet, what are some strategies that you use for yourself in your work when it gets to that point where whatever you're doing is getting a lot? Go ahead.
So that fear, that question of, is it worth it? Particularly in the church, I get in faith spaces and religious institution discussions, I get asked that question a lot, like, why do you even bother? They hate you. And I guess I have two answers to that. One is I just happen to be, to have privilege, but also to be privileged enough that I can take that. I can deal with it if people are going to hate me or challenge me or try to undermine what I know about myself and what I know about the people in my community. And the second thing is, why, to answer the question, why bother? Why not bother? Sure, it hurts me sometimes to be in these spaces that, at least in my case, very occasionally are hostile. I know that many other people face constantly hostile situations, especially in faith spaces and at the intersections of queer and faith identity. But the benefit is that if I can teach some people not to hate some other people by just being stubborn and staying present and continuing to engage, then it's not just me who benefits when people grow. It's those people and the people they encounter next. It's not just me who gets hurt if I get hurt and just walk away. It's the people who don't learn anything from that situation who also get hurt. And so I think maybe that's something that's common to a lot of activists is, you know that the fight is hard, but you also know that the fight is necessary, and it's not just for you. It's not just for the community or the cause that you're fighting for. It's ultimately for everyone. And the really difficult part is getting everyone to understand that it is for everyone.
Yeah, it's kind of like the activist version of the trolley problem, where like,
yes,
is one person going to deal with a lot so that other people don't, or is like everybody going to deal with a lot because it becomes impossible to do so yourself?
Yes.
So like part of my plan for coming out has always been, I've been self-accepting for, happy anniversary, Laura. I'm about 2 weeks behind you, and like I'm not out of the closet yet. And like I hear people like that have been self-accepting for a year and they've already socially transitioned and they're living the life they need to live. And it's devastating to me to know that like I'm coming up on my 2nd anniversary on Easter Monday and I'm still in the closet and still don't know when I'm going to get out. But, I've been building for most of the last 2 years of my life so that Sunday morning when I step into the pulpit and in my Sunday sermon say, hey, congregation, your pastor is a trans woman. And by the way, I'm not resigning. So the ball's in your court. They can fire me. People keep telling me, oh, we've got charter rights in Canada. They can't fire you for being trans. Well, they don't know what I do. It's bullshit. They absolutely can fire me because they're a religious organization and they have every right to discriminate against me. As a matter of fact, there's some pretty serious anti-LGBTQ language in our denominational position statements. So like they're probably going to fire me. But like, so there's an element of protest, I think, in me coming out the way that I'm going to come out. One of my favorite seminary professors was kind of a low-level civil rights leader. I'm from the South. I grew up Southern Baptist. Like I got to hang out with some friends of Martin Luther King a couple of months ago. Like, it's pretty cool when you're a Baptist minister from the South. One of my mentors in seminary desegregated his church in the mountains of North Carolina. And he started there in like 1963, 1964. And one of the first things that happened was an African-American school teacher presented herself for church membership. And he knew at the time that there was no way, based on the bylaws of the church, that she was going to actually get accepted into membership. She had to get like a 75% vote. And the congregation was full of old white racist people because it's the mountains of North Carolina. So he said to her name was Carol. He said, I'm going to fight for you. It's going to be hard. He spent 10 years getting harassed by the people in his church. The woman never got to join the church, but after 10 years, they changed the rules so that African-American folks could join the church. And I think about that woman, that school teacher, who, there are all kinds of really great African-American, predominantly African-American Baptist churches in the southern United States and everywhere else. She could have gone to any one of those. She could have joined any one of them, no problem. She could have walked into any one of them any Sunday morning. But she chose to step into this exclusively white church at the time in 1963, 1964, mountains of North Carolina, and say, I want to become a member of this faith community because I feel led to be there. And so supposedly, if we're having gatherings of more than 50 people again in June here in Canada, that's part of what I'm going to do. One of my favorite books is called God and the Gay Christian by Matthew Vines, and he concludes. Matthew is a really interesting character because he's an evangelical Christian. And he handles the Bible like an evangelical Christian, so it's a little uncomfortable sometimes for me to read the way he handles scripture. I'm just like, well, who cares if that's what the Bible says? It really doesn't matter. He really, he's different. And so, but the conclusion of his book, or there's like a epilogue of his book, where he quotes this gay historian from Yale from around 1980. His name was like John Donahue or something like that. Who said like the greatest gift that LGBTQ plus Christians can give the church is just themselves. And so there are a lot of denominations, there are a lot of faith communities, especially like the big kind of mega church-ish, non-denominational casual warehouse churches, like Walmart churches. Basically, they're everywhere in every single urban area. I know we've got a giant one on the outskirts of Toronto, and it's very fashionable for their ministers to say, "Look, we're not going to condemn anybody."
Oh.
Like the largest, most like fundamentalist, most like unaccepting, really bad theology churches in the Toronto area will say, "Sure, anybody can come here on a Sunday morning. Anybody can sit in our pews," but it's a very different scenario when queer people start saying, well, you know, I want to be baptized, or I want to become a church member, or I want to lead a study group, or and it will certainly be different. You know, my congregation is fairly accepting. We've got we have a summer camp that employs about a dozen university students every summer, and our general director, he came out as gay, and we said, nah, that's okay, you can work for us. We didn't fire him. We elected not to discriminate, even though we were legally entitled to. And in the following, I was very proud. I advocated for him, but ultimately the decision was in the hands of a group of leaders. And the following summer, when he reapplied, the same group of leaders said, look, you know, we know this about him going in. It's okay. So he's a youth volunteer and has worked for our summer camp. So we've been there before, but there's a difference between that happening and like the senior minister, the lead pastor, kind of the face of the church, getting up in the pulpit and saying, actually, I'm a trans woman and I'm not going anywhere. So if you want me to go, you have to call a meeting, you have to have a vote. I mean, it's not, you know, this isn't going to happen. I'm not going to sneak away. I'm not going to run away. I've had friends say to me, well, just go get a job at another church, just resign and turn up someplace else. And gosh, that would be delightful, I think, sometimes. But I feel very deeply that this is what I'm supposed to do. To say, you know, this is who I am. I'm pretty much the same person that you know and love and have been living with and has been ministering to you for 6 years now. And, you know, the ball is in your court.
Yeah.
That was a lot. I'm sorry.
No, thank you.
No.
I think that was very important. I think October has something that she wanted to say.
Yes.
Wait, can you tell her that?
Yeah, we're good.
Okay.
All right. So from October, can I chime in on that? I would like to say, in terms of spirituality and religion, coming out and having to deal with the possibility of losing everything, I empathize on that issue and have been there myself. Living in Texas back in the day in my youth, it's been really rough having to come out in an extremely right-wing family and right-wing small town, especially since I'm a leftist, independent progressive. It took me a long time to find out where I belong in this mad transphobic world, so-called, and having to be tortured in conversion therapy to figure out that I am not a Christian, or that I'm not welcomed in this house of God. So I found peace in the end, having followed my pagan Wiccan belief and just being mindful, kind to others when I can, and learning from my mistakes when I have made them, and be a good person as much as I can on a daily basis. No one's perfect. That's my 2 cents.
Thank you. Okay, this is the worst part in any of these hangouts that I have to do. I have one more person who would really like to join this segment, and I was wondering if there's anybody here who feels like they've been able to say what they wanted to talk about and is willing to take a step back for the last 28 minutes. 38 minutes? 38 minutes.
30.
Yeah, I actually have to get going, so
Okay.
that works out fine.
Oh, I'm so sorry, October, by the way.
So I'm gonna head out. It was nice
Bye.
chatting with y'all.
Yeah, thank you for
Thank you
joining
for
us.
joining.
Nice chatting with you too.
Okay.
Okay.
I don't know how to do this.
I can move you out if you want me to.
Oh, right. Yes, I can take care of that. User settings. 1 second. Sorry, the member list. There we go.
And can you bring Rain in?
Yeah.
Rain Cloud instead?
Yes. just trying to figure out how to actually right-click for more action. Why is it being so rude? Just a second. Sorry, my computer's deciding to be a jerk. Laura, do you mind removing them just for the time being, since my computer has decided it doesn't want to listen to me, and then I can add in RainCloud. There we go.
I mean, at that point, I'm also just going to add her. There you go.
All right. Sorry about that.
There you go.
Okay.
Welcome.
Wonderful.
Let's give that a second to work.
I wanted to add to the whole topic of religion and growing up religious and stuff that I'm really glad that despite my family, like my parents both being Christian pastors, they took my whole transition very well. And I don't know, like for them, it was never a question of hiding it in front of the congregation and like their community, but they for them it was always just clear, there's another part of being human, and that is something we support. But I suppose that the church my parents are in is just, I don't know, a bit more, I think in general, I feel like in Germany we have less Southern Baptist vibes in the church, especially in the Protestant church. So but I just wanted to chime in and say that quickly.
I had some parents approach me. I was down in Virginia at a graduation program and had recently published an article about helping keep trans kids safe in church groups, youth groups, and children's groups. And a friend of mine who's a pastor who I'm out to introduced me to some folks whose son, their child, and I'm not sure how they identified, had recently come out as trans, and they were asked, the two adults who were, one of them was a associate pastor at their church, because their child came out as trans, and because they were supportive of their trans child, they were asked to leave their jobs. And so they came to me and said, hey, we wanted to meet you, we've got a trans kid. And I kind of freaked out, because for a minute I thought my friend had outed me to them, but all he had mentioned was that I had published this article about keeping trans kids safe in church. So yeah, that is maybe a more a common occurrence, at least among evangelical circles.
I also just really, really shortly, my family's very religious and my parents are very active also institutionally in the church, and I've had a lot of very positive experience on that. And then I wanted to ask Rain to introduce herself. Hi.
Hi. I was late today. Drama going on. Hello, everybody. I'm Kara Raincloud, Lady Raincloud on Twitch. I am trans, she, her, hers, please. Disabled U.S. military vet, Native American games industry professional, and variety Twitch streamer. And I'm happy to be here. Thanks for having me. Hello. Hi.
Thanks for joining.
Hi.
Hi.
So if I could just echo on to what we were saying for just a moment there, religious upbringing and background. I was raised as a strict devout Muslim in a small village in North Africa in Libya. And it wasn't until I moved to the United States as a teenager that I encountered anybody who wasn't a devout Muslim. And for the first time in my life, I ran into somebody who was openly queer. And it completely changed my understanding of what I could be in the world. Up until I moved to the United States, I thought I was the only one in the world. I thought I was the only queer person. Oh my God, it was so completely baffling. I couldn't understand it. It was, look, my village was really small. There's like 800 people. And what do? You just stand out a bunch. Anyway, it was really amazing to move to the United States and see all this different religions being practiced, ostensibly religious tolerance being espoused and advocated. And I quickly threw off the shackles of my old religious tradition and set about exploring all the new options available to me, much like a salad bar. And I just picked what I wanted and left the rest. Now I have a delicious plate of food right here.
I was raised non-denominational Christian, and my mother and I had a conversation last November, in which she told me that we were basically in a cult. When I grew up, around the specific pastor and church that we were in, and I just was like, I just thought that was church.
Yep.
So, and then you're talking with your mom, and she goes, "No, we were in a cult." And it's like, oh, okay. I just thought that was normal. So.
I remember hearing that the second coming of Jesus was to be like September the 13th or 15th, 1993. Pretty weird.
Isn't it supposed to be every year?
Somebody says it every year.
Yeah.
I get sort of frustrated about how a lot of queer people don't realize. Maybe they go to a church that they don't realize how unaffirming or unwelcoming it is, just because, like, my friend who's a pastor in New Orleans, there's a really conservative church that rents space from them the hour before they worship. And there's a person that goes to that conservative church who's a trans woman of color. And this really conservative church loves to Instagram with this lady to say, look how diverse we are. Like, their theology is totally an abomination and sinning by not living in the gender that God supposedly gave her when she was born. And she has said to my friend, look, I like your preaching, I like your theology better, but man, the songs are so much fun at that earlier service, and y'all wear robes and play like Bach music, and everybody's old. And so, like, you know, part of my coming out is to make this. And I know queer folks up here in the Toronto area that go to big mega churches that I know that they're not welcoming and affirming, but they're fun churches to attend. So, like, part of my coming out, I want people in those churches to think, no, what if I were to do this, or what if one of our ministry leaders was to do this? Yeah.
But I mean, isn't there a way for you to this is going to be a really big thing when you have your outing, and isn't there a way to basically be a bit manipulative and show them that if they don't accept you, then that goes against the word of God actually, and kind of, you know, just make a bit of noise, make this a really huge topic inside your congregation, make it so that people will be very split on the issue at least, and not just, you know, you don't just go away silently because they fire you, but that people will really have to think about this. I mean, they've known you for years. I can't imagine, I imagine there will be a few people who will just drop you immediately when they find out you're trans, but there will also be a lot of people who accept you as a person, and that won't be changed in the moment that you come out, and instead they will hate everyone who hates on you. And I mean, that would be perfect, right?
I think some of that's going to happen. I've said to people that, you know, I don't want to hurt anyone, and I don't want to cause needless controversy, but I do want to bring about a reckoning within my denomination, which is about 400 churches in Ontario and Quebec. The last time anyone in my denomination came out as queer, a cis gay man was outed by his wife about 15 years ago and showed up to the office on Monday, and his church board had already voted to fire him with no pension. And after that, the denomination adopted some really explicitly anti-queer positional statements that haven't really been revisited in 15 years. And so, you know, a lot of those, the shelf life is pretty bad, and they look awful compared to maybe, I mean, they looked awful in 2005, but they look really awful in 2020. So, yeah, I'm hoping to make a lot of people notice and think, and I hope I make a lot of people uncomfortable. Frankly,
yes.
I talked to that pastor who was out and lost his job, and you know, he's actually a pretty high-level executive for a more liberal denomination here in Canada now. And he said, you know, I don't know that I would do what you're doing because of my kids. And, you know, so people have said to me, like, don't do what you're going to do. But I can't, my conscience won't let me do anything else.
I would like to wrap up the specific church topic. I think we can do a lot of the things that come into that are applicable to other forms of activism or other general areas or other communities that we work with as well. And like to for the last half an hour, last 20 minutes actually, bring it up one level from specific topics that we're working with and more on I don't even know how to put it exactly, on a structural level, on a
meta level?
On a meta level, maybe, yes. Because we're all doing the same thing. We're all trying to engage a specific audience and trying to build understanding and acceptance and love between people, and try to bring that together. And whether you do that in a church, or whether you do that in a political party, or whether you do that in your clan in World of Warcraft or whatever, it works the same way. Yes, Carrie?
So on that, I was going to add in the difficulty of navigating how far you go with your message and with your efforts to change and start conversations and disrupt is such a delicate balance, regardless of what area of activism you're doing, because there is this reputation, there is this stigma and very easily applied social pressure to particularly trans people and trans issues, that we are just very noisy and very angry and bitter and pushing an agenda that doesn't match the spaces that we're trying to push that agenda in, as if we're trying to mold people and society and institutions to us, rather than expanding those people and institutions and societies to include more types of people. So it's sort of like a forcing versus an inviting. Yeah. And so that balance of inviting change and helping these power structures and institutions to understand why change is beneficial and good and important and the right thing to do is a very fine line to walk, for the danger of how they could just very easily tell you that you're just very noisy, you're just the squeaky wheel, and they're just going to throw a bunch of oil onto you so you stop squeaking. And
yeah.
And so I think it's important to figure out how to walk that line, that there is a certain importance to making some noise and making sure that whatever it is that you're doing has a real impact and that people continue talking about it, even if you're pushed out of the space eventually. But then also to make sure that those conversations are constructive and moving toward the outcome that maybe you hoped for, but that you aren't necessarily part of anymore. So it's just a very fine line to walk between being very noisy and very forceful about things, or very inviting and very inclusive in helping people get slowly, comfortably engaged into these difficult conversations.
Ryan?
I don't walk that line. I don't bother walking that line. A lot of people that know me know that I don't. I'm a huge fan of Mona Altahoe, who wrote the 7 Necessary Sins for Women and Girls. And in my activism, I'm the kind of individual that I follow basically her guidance, and I have no desire to be polite or to play politeness and civility and decorum politics with the people who are oppressing us, because usually when you're dealing with people who are oppressing people, say not even just trans, but being native, for the first time in a very long time, a state here in the United States just said they're going to completely disassociate a native reservation and take their lands back this year. Which hasn't happened in a very long time. Do you think that those native people need to be polite in discussing that situation with, hey, you can't just steal our land? It's the same thing with trans people, and the things that I've dealt with personally, being doxxed and attacked, and like that. I don't believe in politeness and civility and decorum politics. You know, when particularly trans women of color are being murdered, more in this country in particular than any other situation. You know, we have a young trans girl just last year who was 17 years old and who was murdered because she was trans. A young trans woman just a few weeks ago who was gunned down in the street for walking out of the bathroom. Where was their politeness and civility, right? Like where was that? And that's why I'm a firm believer in, like, no, I'm not going to be polite with the people who are pushing disinformation, who are pushing narratives and agendas that are intentionally harmful and spiteful and hateful and destructive to trans identities, because you don't beat the system by being polite and working within the system. And that's just my personal belief. I know that really turns a lot of people off, but when people like us are literally being murdered for who we are and literally being gunned down in the street for walking out of the wrong bathroom at the wrong time, I think politeness and civility and decorum and all that is just, it's out the window. I'm done being nice to the people that are oppressing us, and that's just my activism. I'm unfortunately just very angry, and I get that doesn't reach a lot of people, but I also worry that if you're too polite and you're too timid and you're working within the system, that nothing's going to get done because no one's going to listen. Then, like you said, go ahead.
Fine. I would interject there because the way this has been presented is as if these two are mutually exclusive, and I don't think that that's the case. I think it's very context dependent.
I agree.
And there is a lot of situations where being polite and being nice and playing all this politics makes no sense and is not the point and is not the right way of going about it. There's also a lot of situations where no matter how angry people are, you're going to have better results while being nice in specific situations. And I think these two depend on what exactly you're dealing with, what community you're talking to, what the context is. And I don't think that these two have in any way have to be in conflict with each other, but that these two can work very well together, because they don't cancel each other out.
I agree.
From October.
And then afterwards we're going to go to Margaret. Yes?
All right. My statement ready when you are for me to sign it. C, it all depends on how you force that change, especially if a government like the Trump administration has not listened to us for years, and it could lead into a nationwide revolution and possibly months or years of rioting and civil wars. Take a look at what the current 2020 elections is already doing in light of the COVID-19 pandemic. I think it's a warning sign that those who do not vote for Bernie or support a progressive agenda are most likely going to be taken by the COVID-19. I'm not calling it an act of God, being a warning for the struggle of not supporting left-wing progressive policies. There'll be riots.
Okay. Okay, thank you. It's...
I'm not so sure if I agree with that statement because, I just wanna say that I'm really afraid of anything that is rioting or civil wars or something, because I feel like trans people are among those groups that will be very negatively affected by anything like that.
That's a way to put it.
Most immediately. So I'm actually really afraid of that, and I also hope that there will be some sort of structural change as a result of this pandemic that will lead to, I don't know, better healthcare or something. But I'm very skeptical when talking about rioting or anything, that this is gonna literally cost their lives, and I'm not, I'm really hoping that does not happen.
It's also worth remembering a lot of the people who kind of are in positions where they're supporting maybe less progressive things. For example, we look at Boris Johnson and coronavirus. Those are the people who can afford to be treated. Things aren't going to happen to them in the same way. Like, that's just the reality.
Yeah. We're coming up to the end of the segment. I think I'm definitely going to have more of these where we have more time and less people, because at this point this is very much pushed together and we have a lot of different topics that we touched on and that I really want to go in depth with without it being so dense, I'm going to say. I'm going to do those and I'll reach out to all of you again and we can go further in depth on either and all of these. I have plenty of time right now. Until then, I would love it if everybody who feels comfortable or who would like to do a quick closing statement, something about what you've taken away from this, something that you want to leave us with, something you want to plug, or something you want to give people on the way to think about further until the next time we talk, or a topic that you would like me to have as a separate stream for next time, anything like that. And I would also like to thank everybody for coming. I'm sorry about the technical difficulties we've been having sometimes. Discord is notorious for those, but I hope that you still had a good time and that you managed to bring in some of the things that you wanted to say.
Yeah, thank you for inviting us all to be on here. And I personally really enjoyed the discussion, all the different directions that it took. It was very enlightening to me, things that I have no experience in, and got to listen and learn. So thank you for letting me be part of that. And I'll just go right into my plugs then. You can find me on Twitter at OheyKiri, where I primarily make jokes and write long, sincere threads about my experiences of being trans and gay and a person of faith. And you can also listen to my podcast, Oh Hey Kiri, which you can find on Apple Podcasts and Google Play. And yeah, I hope to see you around in the conversations.
Thank you for joining.
Mm-hmm.
Who wants to go next?
I'll go next. So thanks for having me on. I really do appreciate an opportunity to expound the eco-socialist point of view from the Green Party and my own personal perspective. My Twitter is Rainbow Silks, which you can find me on. I'm also a content creator here on Twitch, this very network, and I have a stream which I'll be doing later on this afternoon. And please find me there. I'm also Rainbow Silk as well. If I could just say one last bit about all of that, I've been really impressed by the guests that you've had on so far and everything that they've had to say. It's been a very educational experience for me, and I look forward to the rest of the stream.
Thank you. Thanks for joining us.
Welcome.
Well, thanks for inviting us, Laura. It's really good to see your face. As somebody who doesn't live far from you and has to socially distance, that makes me smile seeing your smile and knowing that we'll hang out and get sushi or something again soon.
Yes.
I want sushi.
Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah. I am. I'm on Twitter, but I don't talk about my job on Twitter. If you know me from Twitter, you can follow me. But I've never mentioned my job on Twitter, only that I'm going to lose it when I come out. And so, if you know me, come find me. But I'm not going to tell you my other name on Twitter. A lot of you already follow me. Some of you. And it's mostly just rants about how nothing's going to work out and everything's hopeless. So there's not a lot of faith that comes out in my Twitter right now. But when I get when I come out, I mean, I expect some of you will hear the hear the story. I know that a couple of folks have approached me about like, I mean, I've never known a trans pastor to come out who didn't make the news. We always make the news, pretty much. Every one of my friends has made the news when they came out to their congregations, and I've already been approached by a couple of folks saying, "Let me write an article about you when you come out." So I'll be sharing those, and hopefully it'll make enough noise, at least in my corner of the world, that some people will ask much needed questions about the relationship between faith communities and the queer community, and so hopefully that happens sooner than later. It's been good to hear your stories and about what you're doing. It makes me really hopeful.
All right, I think October's statement is ready.
Mm-hmm.
Ready? Perfect. What I've learned is how people have not woken up yet. And hopefully after this stream, we will be able to learn how to move forward, especially in light of the COVID-19 pandemic. Feel free to plug in my Twitter, my main and backup ones, and my Patreon and YouTube. Links are all below. So def_.
I'll post those. You don't have to.
Thank you, Laura. That'll make my life a little bit easier. So my main and backup ones and my Patreon and YouTube. Subscribers are welcome to join at an affordable price of $1 a month due to the financial struggles that everyone is experiencing under COVID-19. My YouTube is Deaf Trans Mad Genius Arts. I'll tweet it out today. That's all. Oh, and more projects are coming soon.
Thank you for joining. Oh, okay. All right, thank you so much for joining us. Who wants to go next?
I guess I'll go next. I don't know if well, I did learn that I probably should be more willing to, as was said, the two things are not mutually exclusive, the way that that Kiri was talking about and the way that I was talking about, as far as like how we do activism. But for my plugs, again, I'm Lady Raincloud on Twitch, at Kira Raincloud on Twitter, otherwise known as the Social Justice Paladin, because warriors are boring. And I'm an activist and advocate, Native American disabled military veteran, who, by the way, might get reactivated for the virus because I'm a former medical professional. I got that phone call today. That was fun. And also a games industry professional, so I work in the games industry. So if you want to talk gaming, medicine, native issues, vets issues, all that kind of stuff, hit me up. And yeah, thanks for having me.
Thank you for joining. Henri, do you want to go next? Are you still with us?
Sure.
Okay.
Sure. Like, I don't mind going and plugging my Twitter. It's ANNRI, like Queen at Twitter, and I'm also like regularly on Twitch. So that's where you'll mostly go and find me hanging out. Maybe hope to go and start up a website at some point in regards to my work, and share my activism. So I figure basically as much. The main thing is learning about collaboration and working on that collaboration going forward, because it kind of the basic as much have all of us work together. So it was like real fun to be on here and get the chance to go and discuss more of these topics. So it was real fun.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And yeah, I'll definitely make more focused, longer format ones where we can have a more balanced discussion without this many people in at the same time coming on front here. And Ellie, you're muted.
Now that I've got the fucking new mic, oh my god, there will always be mic issues. I'm sehrlesbisch, everyone. If you don't understand German, it's fine. I tweet German mostly, so you don't have to bother. Otherwise, if you didn't catch that, type very lesbian into Google Translate, and that's my handle. Yeah, if you're in Germany, if you're trans, if you're questioning, DM me. We're currently working on basically writing blank applications for everything you could get transition-wise in Germany, to make it as easy as possible for people to actually get the care that they need and actually deserve. What else? Follow me on Twitter. Tell me how your day was. I don't care.
For everybody who's here, everybody who's going to come on in the next segments, everybody who was here on the segments before, I tweeted out everybody's name and @ ordered by segment yesterday evening, I think. So if you go into my Twitter, you'll find, or on the hashtag as well, you'll find a list of everybody's @ if you didn't catch somebody's @ now here. I know it's also sometimes in Twitch chat, so you can see it there as well. Sorry, Maya, did you have a sign off yet, or are you the last one to go?
I think I'm the last one.
Okay.
I think. I'm not sure. But at least I didn't sign off yet, so I will do that now. Yeah, so it was super interesting to be here. I learned a lot from all of you, and it's for me it's always just so great to be like in a virtual room with so many amazing trans siblings, and I really just appreciate that. It makes me feel like, yeah, we're here, we're powerful. There's so many people doing lots of amazing stuff, and yeah, and at the same time, even though some of what you do might seem intimidating, we can just hang out and talk together and find a lot of common issues, and that's always motivating for me. So yeah, I'll just plug my Twitter, which is also German, MayaMitKind, which basically just means I have a kid. That was like the whole shtick of my account when I started it, and now it's about lots of other stuff too. But hey, I also sometimes stream on Twitch under MayaMiracle, and yeah, then maybe see you around. And this was a very, very nice experience.
Wonderful. Thank you all so much for coming. I know that both Elle and I desperately need a toilet break. So I'm going to ask you to slowly leave the call, and we're going to run to the bathroom. And when we come back, the next person who's adminning for the next 2 hours is probably going to add the guests for the next segment. And I'm going to write a big note for myself that next time I do this, I make like scheduled breaks instead of having a 12-hour stream without a break. So thank you so much for coming. This was really interesting, and I am really happy about all the topics we touched on. I really want to get into all of them. Yes, big heart. Thank you for joining, and talk to you all in the coming days. Take care and stay safe.
Thank you, Laura.
Thank you for joining.
Thanks for organizing this.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Thank you.